Welcome back to Kuma English Listening Hub. Today's topic is something you might have eaten this week without thinking much about it. A tomato. But not just any tomato. We're going inside a modern greenhouse to see how some farmers grow tomatoes all year, even in cold countries, and sometimes without soil at all. If you imagine farming as huge fields under the sun, this episode might surprise you. A greenhouse can look more like a bright factory made of glass and metal. Inside, there are long rows of plants, pipes, sensors, and workers moving carefully between the vines. And the goal is simple: produce fresh, consistent tomatoes in every season. Let's start with the basic question. What is a modern greenhouse, and why is it so different from traditional farming? A greenhouse is a controlled environment. That means the farmer can manage temperature, humidity, light, and even the amount of carbon dioxide in the air. This control helps plants grow faster and stay healthier. In places with long winters, a greenhouse can keep plants warm when it is freezing outside. In very hot places, it can block strong sunlight and prevent heat stress. Now, you might think, isn't that expensive? It can be. Building a greenhouse, heating it, and running equipment costs money. But the advantage is stability. A storm, a sudden cold night, or a week of heavy rain can ruin outdoor crops. In a greenhouse, the farmer can reduce those risks. That's one reason supermarkets like greenhouse produce. The supply is more predictable. Next, let's talk about the most interesting part: growing without soil. This is called hydroponics, which means plants grow with water and nutrients instead of dirt. The roots are supported by another material, like rock wool, coconut fiber, or clay pellets. The plant still needs the same nutrients as in soil, but the farmer delivers them in a precise mix through water. Why avoid soil? There are several reasons. First, soil can contain diseases, or pests, that stay for years. If a farm has a serious soil problem, the harvest can be damaged again and again. In hydroponics, the farmer can start with a clean system. Second, hydroponics can use water more efficiently. Outdoor farming often loses water through evaporation or water running away into the ground. In many hydroponic systems, water is collected, cleaned, and reused. Third, nutrient control is easier. Plants need a balance of nitrogen, potassium, calcium, and other minerals. In soil, that balance changes depending on the weather, the soil type, and previous crops. In hydroponics, the farmer can adjust the recipe like a chef. Of course, hydroponics is not magic. It needs careful monitoring. If the nutrient mix is wrong, plants can suffer quickly because they depend on the system. That's why modern greenhouses often have a surprising amount of technology. Let's imagine you are walking into a large tomato greenhouse. Above you, you see a high ceiling with glass panels. Some greenhouses have special screens that open and close to control light and heat. Along the rows, you see tomato vines reaching up on strings. The plants are trained to grow vertically, which saves space and improves airflow. At the base of each plant, you might see a small block of rock wool. That block holds the roots. A thin tube delivers water and nutrients directly to each plant. The system can give a small amount many times a day, depending on the plant's needs. And how does the greenhouse know what the plant needs? Sensors. There are sensors for temperature, humidity, and light. There are also sensors that measure the acidity of the water, called pH, and the nutrient concentration, often measured as EC, which stands for electrical conductivity. If the pH is too high or too low, the plant cannot absorb nutrients well. If the EC is too strong, the plant can get stressed. So the greenhouse system constantly checks and adjusts. Another key detail is pollination. Tomatoes need pollination to produce fruit. Outdoors, insects and wind help. In a greenhouse, farmers often use bumblebees. Yes, bees at work inside a building. Small bee boxes are placed around the greenhouse, and the bees travel from flower to flower. Bumblebees are popular because they work well in greenhouse conditions and they are very effective with tomato flowers. Now let's discuss pests, because even a controlled environment is not completely protected. You might think a greenhouse is sealed, but tiny insects can still enter on workers' clothes, through open vents, or on new plants brought in from outside. To manage this, many greenhouse farms use integrated pest management. This means they combine different methods instead of only using chemicals. For example, they might release beneficial insects that eat harmful ones. If there are aphids, the farmer may introduce ladybugs or tiny parasitic wasps. If there are spider mites, they can release predator mites. This approach can reduce pesticide use and keep the ecosystem more balanced. But it requires planning. Farmers need to identify pests early, understand their life cycles, and release the right helpful insects at the right time. Workers may walk through the rows every day, checking leaves and traps and reporting what they see. So far, modern greenhouses sound impressive. But you might be wondering about energy. If you heat a huge glass building in winter, doesn't that create a big environmental cost? That is a real concern. Greenhouses can use a lot of energy, especially in cold climates. However, many farms are trying new solutions. Some greenhouses use combined heat and power systems. These produce electricity and use the leftover heat to warm the greenhouse. Others connect to nearby industries and use waste heat from factories. There are also greenhouses that use geothermal energy, which comes from heat underground. And some install solar panels, though solar alone may not be enough in winter. Another clever strategy is capturing carbon dioxide. Plants grow faster when there is a slightly higher level of CO2. Some greenhouses capture CO2 from clean industrial sources and release it inside in controlled amounts. This can increase yields, meaning more tomatoes from the same space. Now, let's talk about quality and taste, because that matters to anyone who eats. Greenhouse tomatoes often look perfect. Smooth skin, same size, same color. But people sometimes complain that supermarket tomatoes have no flavor. Is greenhouse farming the reason? The answer is not simple. Flavor depends on variety, ripeness, and how the tomato is handled after picking. Many tomatoes are picked before they are fully ripe to survive transport. They may be stored cold, which can reduce flavor. Some farms choose varieties that are strong and last long, rather than varieties that taste amazing but bruise easily. However, greenhouse farming can also produce very flavorful tomatoes, especially when farms choose the right varieties and let them ripen longer. Some growers focus on specialty tomatoes like cherry tomatoes or sweet vine tomatoes, and they market them as premium products. So, greenhouse does not automatically mean bland. It depends on decisions made along the supply chain. What about the workers? A greenhouse is not fully automated. Humans do many tasks. Workers prune leaves, remove extra shoots, and guide the vines up their strings. They check for disease and pick fruit at the right stage. In a large greenhouse, harvesting is a daily routine because tomatoes ripen constantly. Working conditions can vary by country and by company. Some greenhouses invest in good lighting, safe equipment, and training. Others may rely on seasonal labor, and the work can be physically demanding. Like many types of agriculture, fair labor practices are an important issue. Let's zoom out and ask a bigger question. Why are greenhouses becoming more common? One reason is climate uncertainty. Outdoor farming is more vulnerable to extreme weather. A greenhouse offers protection and planning. Another reason is land use. In places where land is expensive or limited, producing more food per square meter is valuable. Also, consumers expect fresh produce year-round. People want tomatoes in winter, cucumbers in early spring, and strawberries outside their natural season. Greenhouses make that possible, but there are trade-offs. Greenhouses can reduce water use and pesticide use, and they can produce high yields. At the same time, they may require significant energy and investment. The environmental impact depends on how the greenhouse is powered and managed. So, what might the future look like? We may see more smart greenhouses that use artificial intelligence to predict plant needs. Instead of fixed schedules, the system could learn from data, weather forecasts, plant growth rates, and market demand. We might also see more local greenhouses near cities, reducing transport distance. That could mean fresher produce and fewer emissions from trucks. And we may see more hybrid systems, greenhouses that combine soil, based growing with hydroponics, or farms that reuse rainwater and recycle nutrients. Before we finish, here is a simple way to remember what makes modern greenhouse tomato farming special. It is not only about growing plants under glass, it is about control. Controlling water, nutrients, climate, and pests in a more precise way than outdoor fields. That precision can increase efficiency, but it also requires knowledge and constant attention. Next time you slice a tomato for a sandwich or a salad, think about the journey. It might have grown in a sunny field, or it might have grown on a vertical vine in a warm greenhouse in the middle of winter, with bees doing their job and sensors checking the air. Thanks for listening to Kuma English Listening Hub. If you want, listen again and focus on the key vocabulary like controlled environment, hydroponics, nutrients, pollination, and integrated pest management. And try this speaking challenge. Explain in your own words one advantage and one disadvantage of greenhouse farming. See you in the next episode.